The Vampire King had been staring at her for 3 hours, and Delilah Lawson still couldn't believe it was actually happening. She pressed her back against the cool marble column, champagne flute trembling slightly in her hand, and tried to make herself even smaller than usual. The grand hall of the Covenant estate blazed with crystal chandeliers and jeweled gowns. Laughter echoed off vaulted ceilings painted with scenes of ancient battles. Beautiful people swirled across the floor in perfect choreography, their movements practiced and confident in a way that Delilah could never manage. She didn't belong here. She'd never belonged at these balls, these glittering monthly gatherings where human nobility mingled with vampire aristocracy under the terms of the truce. Her mother had insisted she attend, had called in favors to secure the invitation, convinced that exposure to society would somehow transform her quiet daughter into someone sparkling and sought after. It hadn't worked. 3 balls now, and Delilah had spent each one cataloging the architectural details of whichever corner she'd claimed as her hiding spot. She risked another glance across the hall, through the crowd of dancers, past the laughing clusters of nobles in their finery, up on the dais where the highest-ranking vampires observed the festivities. King Konstantin Erebus sat perfectly still in his chair of black wood and silver, and he was looking directly at her. Delilah's breath caught. She jerked her gaze away, heat flooding her cheeks. Impossible. She'd imagined it. The king had no reason to notice someone like her, a minor noble's daughter with no fortune, no stunning beauty, no accomplishments worth mentioning. She was the girl people's eyes skipped over, the one whose name they forgot 5 minutes after introduction. She counted to 30, then looked again. His eyes hadn't moved. Pale silver, nearly luminous in his alabaster face, they remained fixed on her position by the column. He wore black, as he always did. The jacket cut severely across his broad shoulders. His white hair fell straight to his collar, and his expression revealed nothing. He simply watched. Delilah's hand tightened on her champagne flute. This had to be coincidence. Perhaps he was looking at something behind her or past her, at one of the genuinely notable guests who actually deserved royal attention. She shifted slightly to her left. His gaze followed. Her heart hammered so hard she was certain everyone in the hall must hear it. King Konstantin Erebus, ruler of the Eastern bloodlines, architect of the truce that had ended 3 centuries of war between humans and vampires, was watching her. Not the duchess's daughter in her gown of crimson silk. Not the heiress draped in diamonds who'd been laughing too loudly all evening in an obvious attempt to draw his notice. Not any of the dozens of stunning women who'd positioned themselves in his line of sight with strategic precision. Just Delilah. Plain, shy Delilah, who'd worn a simple dress of deep blue because it didn't draw attention, whose hair was pinned in an uncomplicated style because she couldn't manage anything more elaborate, who'd been counting down the minutes until she could reasonably claim a headache and escape. Hiding again? The voice made Delilah jump. Her friend Margot appeared beside her, golden curls bouncing, eyes bright with champagne and amusement. "You can't spend the whole night behind this column, Dee." "I can try," Delilah said quietly. Margot laughed. "Your mother will be furious. She told mine she was certain you'd make a match this season if you'd just make an effort." She squeezed Delilah's arm affectionately. "Come dance with us. Lord Pemberton's nephew is visiting, and he's not terrible looking." You never think you should, that's the problem." Margot tugged at her hand. "One dance won't kill you." Delilah let herself be pulled a few steps forward, but her eyes drifted back to the dais. The king had risen from his chair. He was tall, she noticed, taller than the other vampires around him, and he moved with the fluid grace that marked his kind. A woman in emerald approached him, hand extended, lips curved in invitation. He said something brief. The woman's smile faltered. She withdrew, and the king's attention swept the room until it found Delilah again. "Are you even listening?" Margot asked. "Sorry, what?" "I said Lord Pemberton's nephew is right over D. Are you all right? You look flushed." "Just warm," Delilah managed. "I think I need some air." "I'll come with you." "No, please enjoy yourself. I'll just step onto the balcony for a moment." She extracted herself from Margot's grip before her friend could protest and made her way along the edge of the hall, careful to stay in the spaces between crowds to avoid notice. The tall glass doors leading to the eastern balcony stood open, curtains billowing gently in the night breeze. She slipped through them and into the blessed quiet beyond. The city spread below, lights glittering in the darkness. The Covenant estate sat at the heart of the capital, a vast complex where vampire and human governance intertwined under the careful terms of the truce. Delilah had learned the history in school like everyone else, the wars, the bloodshed, the brilliant negotiation that had finally brought peace 30 years ago, when King Konstantin had taken the throne and proposed a radical solution: integration instead of isolation, shared governance, mutual protection. It had worked, mostly. There were still tensions, still those on both sides who hated the compromise, but the world was undeniably better than it had been. Safer. No more raids in the night, no more villages burned, no more humans taken as cattle or vampires hunted to ash. The view is better from the north balcony. Delilah spun around so fast she nearly dropped her champagne. King Konstantin stood in the doorway, hands clasped behind his back, expression as unreadable as ever. Up close, he was even more striking than she'd realized. His features were sharp, aristocratic, with high cheekbones and a jaw that looked carved from marble. His eyes caught the light like polished silver. She remembered to curtsy, fumbling slightly, her mind blank of every proper protocol she'd ever learned. "Your Majesty, I didn't mean to. I was just escaping." The word was delivered without inflection, but something in his tone made it sound understanding rather than accusatory. Delilah straightened, unsure how to respond. "I needed air." Understandable. These events can be suffocating. He stepped onto the balcony, and Delilah's instinct was to retreat, but the railing was already at her back. He didn't approach too closely, though. He maintained a careful distance, positioning himself near the opposite end of the balcony, gaze turned toward the city below. "You attend every month," he said. It wasn't a question. "My mother insists," Delilah said, then winced. That sounded ungrateful. "I mean, she believes it's important for me to be part of society." "And you disagree?" "I don't belong in there." The words came out before she could stop them. She bit her lip, horrified at her own honesty. You didn't admit such things to a king, especially not the vampire king, who could probably hear her rabbit-fast heartbeat and smell her nervous sweat. But Konstantin only nodded slowly. "I've noticed you prefer the periphery, the columns, the shadowed corners, always positioned with a clear line to the exits." He'd noticed. He'd actually noticed her specifically, deliberately. "I didn't think anyone saw me," Delilah whispered. "I saw you." 3 words, quietly spoken, and they hit her like a physical force. She stared at him, at the elegant line of his profile, the way the moonlight turned his white hair almost luminous. "Why?" He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was measured, as though he was choosing each word with great care. 3 balls ago, a woman spilled wine on her gown. Everyone around her laughed. You didn't. You offered her your shawl and spoke to her until she stopped crying," Delilah remembered. Lady Helena, a minor baroness who'd been humiliated by her husband's mistress, orchestrating the accident. That was nothing. Just basic kindness. Basic kindness is rarely displayed in that hall. I found it noteworthy. He turned to look at her then, and the full weight of his attention was almost overwhelming. "You are noteworthy." "I'm really not," Delilah said. "I'm nobody. I don't have beauty or wit or talents. I'm just the quiet girl everyone forgets." "I haven't forgotten you." His eyes held hers. "I couldn't if I tried." The world seemed to narrow to the small space of the balcony, to the two of them standing in the moonlight while music and laughter drifted from inside. Delilah's champagne flute trembled in her grip. "I don't understand." "Neither do I, entirely." A ghost of something crossed his face, too fleeting to identify. "I've lived 3 centuries, Delilah Lawson. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've known thousands upon thousands of people. And yet when you walked into that hall 3 months ago and tucked yourself behind the 3rd column on the eastern wall, I found I couldn't look away." Her name in his mouth sounded different, significant. "You know my name." "I made inquiries." He paused. "I hope that doesn't disturb you." "It should," Delilah said honestly. "I should be terrified right now, but I'm not." "What are you?" She considered the question, examined the strange feeling in her chest. Confused. And maybe glad? "Glad," he repeated, tasting the word. That's something. Why didn't you approach me before? In the hall, I mean. You could have asked me to dance or spoken to me. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I am king. Everything I do is watched, analyzed, weaponized. If I showed you favor publicly before understanding whether you would welcome it, I could paint a target on your back. He looked away again, and I wasn't certain I could find the right words. I'm better at commands than conversation. The admission surprised her. This powerful being, this king who'd ended wars and ruled over millions, was admitting to uncertainty, to difficulty with words. It made him suddenly, startlingly real. You're doing fine so far, Delilah said softly. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. Your honesty is refreshing. Most people tell me only what they think I want to hear. I'm too awkward to manage that much calculation. She set her champagne down on the wide stone railing, her hands steadier now. I just say what I'm thinking and usually regret it later. Don't regret it. Not with me. He moved slightly closer, still careful to maintain proper distance. I would like to speak with you again, if you're willing. Why me? She had to ask, had to understand. There are so many women in there who are everything I'm not. Beautiful, accomplished, charming, performing, he interrupted. They perform beauty, perform charm, perform whatever they believe will catch my eye. You don't perform anything. You're simply yourself, quiet and honest and kind. That's rarer than you know. Delilah felt heat rise in her cheeks again. I don't know what to say. Say you'll meet me here next month, during the ball. We can talk. It was absurd, impossible. The Vampire King was asking to meet her, specifically her, for conversation. Her mother would faint from shock. Margot would never believe it. Yes, Delilah heard herself say, I'd like that. He inclined his head, a gesture of acknowledgement that somehow felt more intimate than a bow. Then I'll count the days until the next ball, Delilah Lawson. He left as silently as he'd arrived, slipping back into the hall and disappearing into the crowd. Delilah stood on the balcony for a long time afterward, her heart racing, her mind reeling. When she finally returned inside, Margot pounced on her immediately. Where have you been? I've been looking everywhere, Dee. You're glowing. What happened? Nothing, Delilah said. Just needed air. But she couldn't stop smiling for the rest of the night. The month that followed was the longest of Delilah's life. She went through her usual routines in a daze, helping her mother with household accounts, reading in the library, taking walks in the garden. But her thoughts kept drifting to the balcony, to silver eyes and quiet words, to the impossible fact that the Vampire King had noticed her. She told no one. The secret felt too fragile, too precious to expose to other people's reactions and opinions. Her mother would have plans, schemes, ideas about how to leverage royal attention into an advantageous match. Margot would mean well, but would inevitably tell others, and soon the whole social circle would know. Delilah wanted to keep this thing, whatever it was, private for as long as possible. The night of the fourth ball arrived cold and clear, the first real chill of autumn in the air. Delilah chose a dress of deep burgundy, simple in cut but rich in color. Her mother had been pleased by her apparent increased interest in the balls, attributing it to what she called finally developing proper social awareness. If only she knew. Delilah endured the carriage ride, the entrance into the grand hall, the necessary greetings and small talk. She claimed her usual spot by the eastern columns and waited, champagne in hand, trying not to watch the dais too obviously. Konstantin was there, seated in his chair, surrounded by advisors and courtiers. He looked exactly as he had a month ago, elegant, remote, untouchable. Delilah felt a flutter of doubt. Had she imagined the entire conversation? Had it been some kind of dream, or perhaps a cruel joke? Then his eyes found hers across the crowded hall, and he stood. Every vampire in his vicinity immediately stopped talking. The human nobles nearby noticed and fell silent as well. Konstantin said something to his advisors Delilah was too far away to hear and descended from the dais. The hall seemed to hold its breath. The Vampire King never left his position during balls, never mingled in the crowd, never showed preference or favor to anyone. He walked directly to the eastern balcony doors and stepped outside. Delilah's heart hammered. Was he waiting for her? Should she go? Everyone would see. Everyone would know. "That's odd," Margot said, appearing beside her again. "The king just went outside. I've never seen him do that before." "Maybe he needed air too," Delilah managed. "Maybe." Margot's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "You should go out there." "What? Why would I?" "Because something interesting is happening, and you never let yourself be part of interesting things. Go. See if he's all right. Worst case, he ignores you. Best case, you have a story to tell." Delilah hesitated, then made a decision. She handed Margot her champagne and walked toward the balcony, trying to look casual, as if this was perfectly normal behavior. She could feel eyes on her back, hear the whispers starting. Konstantin stood at the railing, looking out over the city. He didn't turn when she emerged, but she saw his shoulders relax slightly. "You came," he said. "You asked me to." She moved to stand beside him, leaving a careful space between them. "Though you weren't very subtle about it this time." "No." He glanced at her, and she caught something almost like amusement in his eyes. "I've decided subtlety is inefficient." "People are staring. Let them. They'll talk. They talk regardless. I'd rather give them something true to discuss than let them invent fictions." He turned to face her fully. "Unless you'd prefer I remain subtle. I won't compromise your comfort for my preference." The consideration in his words warmed her. "I don't mind," she said. "It's just new. I'm not used to being noticed." "You'll have to become accustomed to it. I intend to keep noticing you." There was certainty in his tone, a quiet confidence that made her pulse quicken. "We barely know each other. Then we should remedy that. Tell me about yourself." "Delilah. What occupies your time when you're not enduring these balls?" She almost laughed. "My life is desperately boring. I read. I manage household accounts because I'm good with numbers. I take walks. That's about it." "What do you read?" "Everything. History, philosophy, novels, poetry, whatever I can find." "Favorite subject?" "History," she said without hesitation, "especially the period before the truce. I know that probably sounds strange to you, since you lived through it." "It doesn't sound strange. It sounds honest." He leaned against the railing, his posture more relaxed than she'd ever seen it. "What fascinates you about that time?" "The question of whether peace was inevitable or accidental, whether individuals actually changed the course of history, or if larger forces would have led to the same outcome regardless." She warmed to the topic, forgetting her usual shyness. "You proposed the truce, and it worked, but would someone else have proposed something similar eventually? Or were you the unique factor that made it possible?" "I don't know," Konstantin said. "I've wondered the same thing myself." "Really?" "I'm not the first to propose peace. I was simply the first with enough power to enforce it, and enough patience to negotiate its terms. Perhaps the timing was right in a way it hadn't been before. Perhaps I was merely fortunate." He paused. "Or perhaps some things happen because they must, and history finds a way." They talked for an hour, then two. Delilah forgot about the ball happening inside, forgot about the whispers and stares. Konstantin asked her questions and actually listened to her answers. He told her about the early days of the truce, the challenges and compromises, the moments when it had nearly fallen apart. He spoke precisely, carefully, but with an underlying passion that revealed how much the work had mattered to him. When she finally returned to the hall, Margot practically dragged her into a corner. "What happened out there? You were gone forever. The king only came back inside 20 minutes ago, and he looked, I don't even know how to describe it. Less terrifying?" "We just talked," Delilah said. "For 2 hours? About what?" "History, politics, books." Margot stared at her. "The vampire king spent 2 hours discussing books with you." "Yes. Do you understand what this means? He's interested in you, romantically interested." The words made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Delilah pressed a hand to her stomach, where butterflies had taken up permanent residence. "That's impossible." "It's happening. Everyone noticed. My mother's already asking questions, and Lady Worthington looked like she'd swallowed glass." Margot gripped her shoulders. "This could change your entire life." "I know," Delilah whispered. "That's what terrifies me." But when she looked across the hall and found Konstantin's eyes on her again, the terror mixed with something else, something warm and fluttering and impossibly hopeful. The fifth ball came 3 weeks later. Someone's birthday celebration had been folded into the regular schedule. Delilah arrived to find the atmosphere noticeably different. People looked at her now. Whispers followed her movements. Lady Worthington and her circle of elegant friends watched with barely concealed hostility. Margot stuck close to her side. "Ignore them. They're just jealous." "They have reason to be," Delilah murmured. "They're all more suitable than I am." Apparently the king disagrees. Konstantin was already on the balcony when Delilah slipped outside. He'd taken to simply waiting for her there now, skipping the pretense of starting the evening on the dais. Tonight he'd brought wine and 2 glasses. "I thought champagne might be getting tedious," he said, offering her a glass. "Thank you." She accepted it, their fingers brushing briefly. The contact sent a spark up her arm. "You're going to cause a scandal if you keep this up." "I'm 300 years old. I've caused countless scandals. One more won't damage me." He settled into a chair he'd had brought out earlier. 2 chairs, she noticed, positioned to face both the view and each other. "You're worried about the attention." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "People are talking, making assumptions." "Are their assumptions wrong?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. She sat slowly in the second chair, buying time. "What are they assuming?" "That I'm courting you." Her breath caught. "Are you? Would you object if I were?" "You're answering questions with questions." "A diplomatic habit. I'll be clearer." He set his wine down and turned to face her fully. "I'm interested in you, Delilah. Deeply interested, in a way I haven't been interested in anyone for longer than I care to admit. I enjoy our conversations. I think about you constantly. I find myself counting days between these balls like a lovesick fool." His expression remained controlled, but his eyes burned with intensity. "If that constitutes courting, then yes, I'm courting you." Delilah's heart threatened to beat straight out of her chest. "I'm human. I noticed. I'm nobody. No title, no fortune, nothing to offer a king. You're kind and intelligent and honest. You see the world clearly and speak your mind. You make me laugh, which is rarer than you know. You're not nobody. Delilah, you're extraordinary in ways that matter." "I'll age," she said, the words tumbling out. "I'll grow old and die while you stay exactly as you are. That's not fair to you." "Shouldn't I decide what's fair to me?" He leaned forward slightly. "I've lived 3 centuries. I'll likely live 30 more. The truce will outlast me, shaped by others. My legacy is secure. What I don't have is someone who sees me as something other than a king or a vampire or a political entity. You see me as simply myself. That's worth more than immortality." "You could turn me," she whispered. "If that's what you wanted. If this went somewhere, you could make me like you." His expression hardened. "I could. But I won't unless you truly asked from genuine desire and not from perceived obligation. Vampirism isn't a gift I give lightly. It changes everything you are, erases your humanity in ways that can't be undone." He reached for her hand, his cool fingers wrapping around hers. "I don't want you as a vampire, Delilah. I want you as you are, human, finite, precious exactly because your time is limited." Tears pricked her eyes. "That's the saddest thing anyone's ever said to me." "It's the truth. I've had immortal companions. I've had vampire lovers who'll outlive empires. What I've never had is someone whose every moment with me is a choice, a sacrifice of their limited time." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "If you choose to spend some of your finite, beautiful life with me, I'll treasure every second, and when your time comes, I'll mourn you properly and remember you always. That's what I'm offering, not eternity. Just whatever time you'll give me." "That's terrifying," she said. "Yes. And sad. Yes. And somehow the most romantic thing I've ever heard." His expression shifted, softening in a way she'd never seen. "Is that a yes?" "I don't know what I'm agreeing to." "To letting me court you properly, to seeing where this goes, to giving us a chance." Delilah looked at their joined hands, his pale and cool, hers warm and flushed. Everything about this was impossible. Everything about this went against logic and reason and social expectation. She should say no. She should protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak, from the scrutiny and pressure, from loving someone she'd outlive or who'd outlive her, depending on which was worse. "Yes," she said. "I'm saying yes." He smiled, actually smiled, and it transformed his entire face. He raised her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, achingly gentle. "Thank you." They stayed on the balcony until the ball ended, talking and laughing quietly, hands intertwined. When they finally returned inside, the whispers exploded into full conversations. Delilah saw her mother's shocked face across the hall, saw Margot's gleeful grin, saw Lady Worthington's fury. She didn't care. For the first time in her life, Delilah felt seen, truly, completely seen. And it was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. The courtship proceeded under intense scrutiny. Every ball became an event where Delilah was watched, analyzed, judged. Konstantin remained unfazed by the attention, setting a precedent that she tried to follow. He introduced her to his advisors, who were politely baffled by his choice. He arranged private dinners at the Covenant estate, where they could talk without hundreds of eyes on them. Delilah learned about him in increments. He'd been turned at 28, 3 centuries ago, during the height of the Vampire Wars. He'd been a military commander in his human life, which explained his bearing and decisiveness. He read voraciously and remembered everything. He had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. He was patient and careful, always letting her set the pace of their physical intimacy, a touch, a kiss, nothing rushed. He learned about her too, her love of mathematics and how numbers made sense in a way people often didn't, her complicated relationship with her ambitious mother, her few close friends and preference for depth over breadth in relationships, her dreams of maybe teaching someday, though that was impractical given her gender and class. "Why impractical?" he'd asked over dinner one evening. "Women don't typically teach beyond governess work, and I'd need credentials I don't have. We could change that. The university system is evolving under the truce. If you wanted to study formally, pursue teaching, I could arrange it. You can't just rearrange society because you're dating me." "I'm not rearranging society. I'm removing arbitrary barriers. There's a difference." He'd said it so matter-of-factly, as if changing centuries of tradition was simple logistics. She'd laughed and kissed him, marveling at how natural it had become. But not everyone was happy about their relationship. The whispers grew darker. Gold digger, some called her, social climber, manipulator who'd somehow tricked the king. The beautiful women who'd been positioning themselves for his attention seethed with resentment. Delilah tried to ignore it, but the hostility wore on her. Margot reported hearing vicious gossip at every gathering. Her mother, while thrilled by the royal connection, worried about the sustainability of such a high-profile relationship. Even some of Konstantin's advisors made their doubts clear. "She's unsuitable," Delilah overheard one say during a ball. She'd been returning from the powder room and had paused outside the council chamber when she heard voices. "No family connections, no political value. This infatuation will damage his credibility." "The king's personal life is his own business," another voice replied. Victor, one of Konstantin's oldest friends. "Not when he's making a spectacle of it, mooning over some nobody while legitimate prospects go ignored. Lady Worthington's family controls 3 provinces. The Duchess's daughter has connections to the human parliament. What does this Lawson girl offer?" Delilah fled before she could hear more, her eyes stinging. She found a quiet alcove and tried to compose herself. The voice was right. She offered nothing but herself, and maybe that wasn't enough. "Delilah." She looked up to find Konstantin standing before her, concern etched on his face. "What happened?" "Nothing. I'm fine." "You're crying." She wiped at her eyes. "I overheard some of your advisors. They think I'm unsuitable for you." His expression went cold. "Which advisors?" "It doesn't matter. They're not wrong." "They're absolutely wrong." He knelt before her, taking her hands. "You're the only person in 3 centuries who's made me feel something beyond duty and obligation. You're thoughtful and genuine, and you challenge me. That's not nothing, Delilah. That's everything. But politically, politics be damned. I didn't end a war just to trap myself in another kind of cage." His grip tightened. "If they can't see your worth, that's their failure, not yours." She wanted to believe him, but doubt had planted itself deep. The 6th ball fell on the autumn equinox, a significant date in vampire tradition. The grand hall had been decorated with harvest symbols and dark flowers. The crowd was larger than usual, packed with nobility from surrounding regions who'd come for the celebration. Delilah wore a gown of midnight blue that Konstantin had sent her, beautiful and elegant, but still simple in style. She felt the weight of hundreds of stares as she entered. The whispers followed her like a shadow. Konstantin was on the dais, surrounded by visiting dignitaries. He caught her eye and inclined his head, a small private acknowledgement. She found her usual spot by the columns and tried to breathe. Well, the famous Miss Lawson. Delilah turned to find Lady Amelia Worthington standing beside her, beautiful in emerald silk, her smile sharp as knives. 3 other women flanked her, all dripping in jewels and condescension. "Lady Worthington," Delilah said carefully, "I must admit I'm impressed. You've managed to keep his attention for what, 3 months now? That's longer than I expected." "I'm not playing a game." "Of course you are. We all are. The difference is, some of us know the rules." Amelia stepped closer. "You're in over your head, darling. The king will tire of your novelty eventually, and when he does, you'll have nothing. No prospects, no reputation, just the shame of having reached too high." "I think you should leave her alone," Margot said, appearing suddenly at Delilah's shoulder. Amelia ignored her, eyes fixed on Delilah. "I'm not being cruel. I'm being realistic. You don't belong in his world. You're a footnote, a curiosity. The sooner you accept that and step aside gracefully, the better for everyone." "The only person who gets to decide whether I belong is Konstantin," Delilah said, finding her spine. "Not you." "How sweet. First names now. Tell me, does he whisper promises to you? Talk about a future together?" Amelia's laugh was brittle. "Vampires live forever, darling. Their idea of forever and yours are very different things." The words hit harder than they should have. Delilah knew the truth of them, had thought the same things herself in dark moments. But hearing them spoken aloud with such vicious accuracy made her feel small and foolish. "Leave! Now!" Konstantin's voice cut across the alcove like a blade. He stood behind Amelia, having crossed the hall with vampire speed. His expression was glacial. Amelia paled. "Your Majesty, I heard what you were doing. You will apologize to Delilah immediately, and then you will remove yourself from this ball and any future events until I say otherwise. You can't ban me I can do whatever I wish. I'm the king." His eyes were hard as diamonds. "Apologize?" Amelia's jaw worked. She looked at Delilah with pure hatred, but she managed a stiff, "My apologies, Miss Lawson." "Now leave." She left, her friends scurrying after her. The nearby crowd had gone silent, watching the scene with rapt attention. Konstantin turned to Delilah, his expression softening immediately. "Are you all right?" "Everyone's staring," she whispered. "Let them." He offered his hand. "Dance with me." "I don't dance well." "Neither do I. We'll be terrible together." His eyes held hers. "Please." She took his hand. He led her onto the floor as the musicians struck up a waltz. Delilah stumbled through the first few steps, hyper-aware of every eye on them, but Konstantin guided her with patient firmness. "Stop thinking about them," he said quietly. "Look at me." She did. His face filled her vision, pale and beautiful, and utterly focused on her. The rest of the hall faded to background noise. "She was right about some things," Delilah said. "I don't fit in your world. You fit with me, that's what matters. For how long? Until you get bored? Until someone more suitable comes along?" He pulled her closer. "Propriety be damned. I've lived 300 years. I've met thousands of suitable people. None of them made me feel the way you do. None of them made me want to leave council meetings early just to hear about their day. None of them made me believe that the time I have left, however long it is, could actually be spent in happiness instead of duty." "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I. That's how I know this matters." He spun her gently, and she followed his lead. "Love is terrifying, Delilah. It makes you vulnerable. It changes everything. But it's also the only thing that makes immortality bearable. You love me?" "Desperately. Completely. In ways I didn't think I was still capable of." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I love you, Delilah Lawson, and I will love you for whatever time we have, and mourn you when you're gone, and count myself fortunate for every moment." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I love you too. So much it scares me." He smiled, rare and genuine and beautiful. "Then be scared with me. We'll figure it out together." They finished the dance while the hall watched. When the music ended, Konstantin kept hold of her hand and turned to address the crowd. I want to make an announcement," he said, his voice carrying easily across the space. "I'm formally declaring my intention to court Delilah Lawson with the aim of making her my partner. Anyone who takes issue with this is welcome to discuss it with me directly." The hall erupted in whispers. Delilah squeezed his hand, overwhelmed and grateful and terrified all at once. Her mother fainted, Margot cheered, the vampire advisors looked resigned, and Konstantin just smiled at her like she was the only person in the world. The weeks following the announcement were chaos. Formal courtship declarations came with protocols and expectations that Delilah had never imagined. There were ceremonies to attend, documents to sign, meetings with vampire councils and human parliament members. Her life became a whirlwind of activity and scrutiny. Through it all, Konstantin remained steady. He navigated the political complexities with practiced ease while making sure Delilah never felt overwhelmed. When she was exhausted from formal dinners, he'd arrange quiet evenings in his private library. When she was frustrated with protocol, he'd listen and adapt what he could. When she doubted herself, he'd remind her of her worth with patient certainty. "You're doing beautifully," he told her one evening. They were in his study, her curled in a chair while he worked through correspondence. "The council members are impressed with your intelligence. The parliament representatives appreciate your thoughtfulness." Lady Sinclair spent 20 minutes explaining how I was holding my fork wrong. "Lady Sinclair is tedious, and you were holding it fine." He set his papers aside and came to kneel by her chair. "I know this is difficult. The scrutiny, the expectations, the feeling that everyone's waiting for you to fail. But you're not failing. You're exceeding every expectation that matters." She touched his face, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. "I wish I could see myself the way you see me." "You will. Eventually." He turned his head to kiss her palm. "You're stronger than you know." The 7th ball was approaching, the last of the season before winter recess. Traditionally, it was the most elaborate, a celebration before the cold months limited travel. This year it carried additional weight. It would be Delilah's first appearance as Konstantin's officially acknowledged partner. She was terrified. "What if I do something wrong?" she asked Margot while being fitted for her gown. "What if I embarrass him?" "You won't. You'll be yourself, which is what he wants." Margot adjusted the fabric at Delilah's shoulder. "Besides, half the nobility is already on your side. The other half will come around or stay bitter. Either way, you've won." "This doesn't feel like winning." "That's because you're humble. It's one of your better qualities, even when it's annoying." The gown was stunning silver like moonlight, elegant and understated in a way that suited Delilah perfectly. Konstantin had consulted on the design, she knew, making sure she'd feel comfortable while still looking the part of a king's chosen partner. The night of the ball arrived cold and crisp, the first snow of winter falling gently outside. Delilah's mother fussed over her appearance, still half in shock that her quiet daughter had captured royal attention. Her father, a quiet man who rarely attended social events, hugged her tightly before she left. "Be happy," he said simply. "That's all that matters." The grand hall glittered with ice-themed decorations. Delilah entered alone. Konstantin would already be on the dais, and she'd join him there in a formal presentation. Her stomach twisted with nerves. Every eye turned to her as she crossed the hall. She kept her chin up, focused on putting one foot in front of the other. The crowd parted, creating a clear path to the dais. Konstantin stood as she approached. He wore black as always, severe and elegant, but his eyes were warm as they met hers. He descended the steps and offered his hand. "You're radiant," he said quietly. "I'm terrified." "I know, but you don't show it." He tucked her hand into his arm and turned to address the assembled nobility. "Thank you all for attending tonight. As you know, this is the final ball of the season, and I wanted to take this opportunity to reaffirm my commitment to Delilah Lawson before we enter winter recess." The hall murmured. This wasn't standard protocol. Reaffirmations usually came much later in formal courtships. Konstantin continued. "There have been questions about the suitability of my choice. Concerns about political implications and social precedent. I want to address those now, clearly and publicly." Delilah's pulse quickened. What was he doing? Delilah Lawson is not a political alliance. She offers no strategic advantage or family connections. She will not strengthen trade routes or secure treaties. His voice rang clear and firm. What she offers is something far more valuable: genuine partnership, intelligence, kindness, honesty, the ability to see beyond titles and power to the person beneath. In 3 centuries, I've never found anyone who compliments me the way she does. That's worth more than any political calculation. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands. I'm not asking for council approval or social acceptance. I'm informing you all that Delilah is my choice, now and for whatever future we build together. Anyone who cannot respect that is welcome to absent themselves from court. The hall sat in stunned silence. Delilah stared at him, tears threatening to spill. He'd just put his entire political capital behind her, publicly and irrevocably. That was dramatic, she whispered. I felt it necessary. He smiled slightly. Also, I'm tired of the whispers. Better to settle it definitively. You're impossible. You love me anyway. Unfortunately, yes. He laughed, genuine and delighted, and the tension in the hall broke. Applause started somewhere in the back and spread, tentative at first, then growing. Not everyone joined in. Delilah could see pockets of disapproval, but enough people clapped that it felt like acceptance. Konstantin led her to the dais where 2 chairs had been placed side by side. They sat together, and the ball resumed its normal flow. But something had shifted. Delilah felt it in the way people approached them now, with respect rather than skepticism, with curiosity rather than condescension. Victor, Konstantin's oldest advisor, came to speak with them during a lull in the music. He was ancient even by vampire standards, white-haired and sharp-eyed. That was quite the declaration, he said. Too much? Konstantin asked. No, necessary, I think. You've made your position clear. The opposition will settle down now that they know pushing won't change your mind. He looked at Delilah with assessment that felt less hostile than before. You make him happy. I can see it. That's not nothing. Thank you, Delilah said quietly. Don't thank me yet. You'll have to deal with him for the foreseeable future. That's punishment enough. But Victor's eyes held approval as he moved away. The evening progressed beautifully. Delilah danced with Konstantin, and then with some of the human nobles who wanted to show their support. She conversed with vampire dignitaries who were genuinely interested in getting to know her. She even received a stiff but civil acknowledgement from the Duchess, whose daughter had been angling for Konstantin's attention for years. As midnight approached, Konstantin drew her back to the eastern balcony, their place. Snow fell softly beyond the railing, muffling the city sounds below. Thank you for tonight, Delilah said, for what you said in there. I meant every word. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. She fit against him perfectly, her warmth bleeding into his coolness. I want to build a life with you, Delilah. A real life, not just a courtship for show. What does that look like? I don't know entirely. We'll figure it out as we go. He pulled back enough to see her face. But I know it includes you finishing your education if you want. Teaching, if that's your dream. Living wherever makes you happiest, the Covenant estate, a house in the city, somewhere else entirely. Traveling together, building something that's ours, not just mine. That sounds wonderful, she said, and terrifying. Most good things are. He kissed her forehead, tender and sweet. We have time, not forever, but enough. We'll make it count. They stood together in the snow, wrapped in each other, while music drifted from inside. Delilah felt peace settle over her, quiet and certain. This was real. This was happening. The shy girl nobody noticed had somehow found love with a vampire king, and it was strange and improbable, and absolutely right. Winter recess came, and with it a break from balls and public scrutiny. Konstantin used the time to show Delilah parts of his world she hadn't seen yet. He took her to the vampire archives deep beneath the Covenant estate, where centuries of history were preserved. He introduced her to artists and scholars in the vampire community who worked outside politics. He brought her to a small estate he owned in the countryside, where they could be alone without servants or advisors or expectations. It was there, in front of a fire in his private study, that he asked, Do you ever wish I could give you forever? Delilah looked up from her book. They'd been reading companionably for the past hour, her curled on the sofa while he worked through correspondence in his chair. Sometimes, she admitted, but not as often as you'd think. No? I like being human. I like the seasons changing and knowing I'm changing with them. I like that my time matters because it's limited. She set her book aside. If I had forever, I think I'd lose that urgency, that appreciation for now. You're wiser than I was at your age. You were 28 when you turned. I'm 22. Maybe wisdom comes with those extra 6 years. He smiled. Maybe. He set his papers down and came to sit beside her. I worry about losing you, about watching you age while I stay frozen, about the day you're gone and I'm still here. I worry about that too, she said honestly. But Konstantin, we could spend our whole relationship worrying about the end, or we could just live it, love it, make it as full and beautiful as possible for however long we get. When did you become so brave? When I fell in love with a vampire king. It required a certain level of courage. He kissed her then, deep and slow, pouring 3 centuries of loneliness and longing into the contact. Delilah kissed him back with all the passion of her mortal heart, vivid and fierce and completely present. They made love that night for the first time, gentle and overwhelming, learning each other's bodies with reverent attention. Konstantin was careful with his strength, mindful of her fragility, but Delilah felt anything but fragile. She felt powerful and alive and utterly cherished. Afterward, lying in his arms while firelight played across the ceiling, she said, I'm happy. Truly, completely happy. So am I, he replied. I'd forgotten what this felt like. We should remember it for when things get difficult again. They will get difficult. The opposition hasn't disappeared, just quieted. I know, but we'll handle it together. He tightened his arms around her. Together. I like the sound of that. They returned to the city as spring approached, ready to face whatever came next. The balls would resume soon, and with them all the politics and scrutiny. But Delilah felt steadier now, more certain of her place beside Konstantin. The 8th ball was scheduled for the spring equinox, another significant date. Delilah prepared carefully, knowing this would set the tone for the new season. She chose a gown of pale green, fresh and hopeful, a contrast to the winter's silver. She arrived with her parents this time, her mother still overwhelmed but proud, her father quietly supportive. Konstantin greeted them personally, showing respect that made her mother nearly weep with gratitude. You honor my family, Delilah said as they moved toward the dais. You are my family now, he replied simply. They deserve respect for raising someone so extraordinary. The ball proceeded smoothly. Delilah had grown more comfortable with the social dance, the conversations and protocols. She could navigate the room with more confidence, could hold her own in discussions with nobles and dignitaries. She was learning. But trouble came anyway, as Konstantin had predicted. Midway through the evening, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Voices raised in anger, then a scream. The music stopped abruptly. Konstantin was on his feet instantly, moving toward the disturbance with vampire speed. Delilah followed more slowly, her heart pounding. A young woman stood in the center of a crowd, her dress torn, blood on her face. They attacked my carriage, she gasped. Human extremists. They said the truce is a betrayal. They said... She broke off, sobbing. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Extremist factions existed on both sides, humans who hated vampires, vampires who hated the compromise of peace. But attacks had been rare recently, the extremists mostly pushed to the fringes. Konstantin's expression was ice. Where? The eastern road near the old market. The woman swayed. A vampire man steadied her husband, Delilah guessed. They had torches, silver weapons. They would have killed us if we hadn't run. How many? 12, maybe more. Konstantin turned to Victor. Assemble a unit. Find them. I want them arrested and tried under truce law. At once, Your Majesty. Victor departed, taking several other vampires with him. Konstantin addressed the hall, his voice carrying authority. This attack will not go unanswered. The truce protects all citizens, human and vampire alike. Those who violate it will face consequences. He paused. The ball will continue. We will not let extremists dictate our actions or disturb our peace. Slowly, carefully, the musicians resumed playing. Conversation restarted, but the atmosphere had shifted. Fear and anger simmered beneath the surface. Delilah found Konstantin speaking urgently with his remaining advisors. She waited until there was a break, then touched his arm. "What can I do?" He looked at her, and some of the hardness in his expression softened. "Stay safe. That's what you can do. I'm not in danger here. You might be. If this was coordinated, there could be others. Threats inside the estate as well as outside." He cupped her face briefly. "Please, stay where I can see you." "All right." But the attack had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. The truce felt stable, permanent, but tonight proved how fragile peace could be, how quickly violence could resurface. The extremists were captured before dawn. Victor returned to report they'd been a small cell, human supremacists who believed vampires should be eradicated, not negotiated with. They'd targeted the young couple specifically because they were vampire nobility, leaving a truce event a symbolic strike. "They'll be tried and punished," Konstantin said grimly, "under human law as well as vampire law. Both sides will see justice served." The trial happened swiftly, a joint human-vampire tribunal that found the attackers guilty. They were sentenced to decades in prison, long enough that the point was made, but not so harsh that it would inflame tensions further. It was a careful balance, the kind that had kept the truce functional for 30 years, but the attack had consequences. More guards were posted at events, security tightened across the city. And Delilah noticed people looking at her differently now, not just as the king's curious choice, but as a potential target, a vulnerability in Konstantin's armor. She mentioned it to him one evening. They were in his private quarters, the safest place in the estate. "People see me as a weakness now, a way to hurt you." "People are fools." He pulled her into his arms. "You're not a weakness, you're my strength." "That's very romantic and also completely impractical." "I'm aware." He sighed against her hair. "I've increased your security. Guards who'll follow you outside the estate, safety protocols for your family's home. I know you hate the attention. I hate that you have to worry about this, about me." "I'd worry regardless. At least this way I can do something about it." He pulled back to look at her. "Are you afraid?" "A little," she admitted, "but mostly I'm angry. These people want to drag us back to war, to destroy everything good that's been built. I won't let them." "Neither will I." His eyes held fierce determination. "We'll protect the truce and each other." The season progressed with heightened tension, but no further attacks. The extremist cell had been isolated, their support minimal. Most people, human and vampire alike, valued peace too much to risk it. Delilah continued her education, enrolling in university courses through a program Konstantin had helped expand. She studied history and mathematics, excelling in both. She made friends among the other students, humans who knew about her relationship with the king but treated her normally anyway. It was refreshing. She also began teaching informally, tutoring younger students in mathematics. The work filled something in her, a sense of purpose beyond being the king's partner. Konstantin encouraged it completely, proud of her accomplishments. "You're building your own identity," he said one evening, watching her mark papers. "You're not just my partner. You're Delilah, teacher and scholar. I love seeing you come into your own." "I'm still figuring out who that is." "So am I after 300 years. It's an ongoing process." The 9th ball fell on midsummer, the longest day of the year. The grand hall was decorated with flowers and light, a celebration of sunshine and warmth, ironic for a vampire event, but the truce had blended traditions from both cultures. Delilah wore gold, bright and bold, a statement of confidence she'd earned over the past months. She entered the hall not hiding behind columns, but walking directly to the dais, head high, meeting the stairs with calm acknowledgement. Konstantin's smile when he saw her was pure delight. "You look like sunlight. Don't let it burn you." "Too late. I've been burning since I met you." They danced together, talked with guests, played their roles as partners in governance and in life. Delilah noticed with satisfaction that most people had accepted their relationship now. There were still dissenters, still whispers, but the majority had moved from skepticism to acceptance. Lady Worthington approached during a lull. Delilah tensed, but Amelia's expression was carefully neutral. "Miss Lawson, you look well." "Thank you, Lady Worthington." I wanted to apologize for my behavior at the autumn ball. It was inappropriate and cruel." The words sounded sincere, if stiff. "You've proven yourself more capable than I gave you credit for." It wasn't a ringing endorsement, but it was something. "I appreciate that," Delilah said carefully. Amelia inclined her head and moved away. Konstantin, who'd been watching the exchange, raised an eyebrow. "Progress. Or strategy. I'm not sure which. Does it matter?" "I suppose not." Delilah took his hand. "As long as people are civil, I can work with that." As the evening wound down, Konstantin pulled her aside. "I have something to ask you, a proposal of sorts." Her heart jumped. "What kind of proposal?" "Not that kind, not yet." His eyes twinkled. "I want you to move into the estate, officially. We've been dancing around it, you staying here frequently but maintaining your parents' house as your formal residence. I want you here, with me, properly." "That's a big step." "I know, and I know it means more scrutiny, more pressure. But Delilah, I wake up on the mornings you're not here, and the day feels wrong. I want every morning to start with you, every evening to end with you. I want us to build a real home together, not just stolen moments between obligations." She thought about her little room at her parents' house, the life she'd lived before Konstantin. It felt small now, distant, like something from someone else's story. Her real life was here, with him, in this strange, beautiful, impossible relationship they'd created. "Yes," she said, "I'll move in." His smile was radiant. "When?" "Give me a week to sort my things and say proper goodbyes to my parents." "Done." He kissed her, deep and claiming. "You've just made me the happiest vampire in existence." "Just vampire? Not the happiest being?" "I'm competing with mortals who don't know any better. It's not a fair contest." She laughed and kissed him again, joy bubbling through her. The move happened smoothly. Konstantin had prepared an entire wing of the estate for her bedroom, study, library, sitting room. It was more space than she'd ever had, decorated with thoughtful attention to her preferences. Books lined the shelves, a desk positioned by the window for optimal light, soft chairs for reading. "You did all this?" she asked, walking through in wonder. "I wanted you to feel at home, your space arranged however you like. You can change anything." "It's perfect." She turned to him, overwhelmed. "You're perfect. Far from it, but I try for you." They settled into a rhythm of domestic life. Konstantin had responsibilities that took him away for hours: council meetings, governance duties, diplomatic negotiations. Delilah had her studies and teaching. But they made time for each other, for meals together, and evenings reading side by side, for walks in the estate gardens and long conversations about everything and nothing. It felt right, natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. The 10th ball came in early autumn, a year since Konstantin had first watched Delilah from across the hall. She'd been preparing her outfit when he knocked on her study door. "Can I come in?" "Of course." He entered, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "I have something for you. For tonight." He opened a velvet box to reveal a necklace of stunning craftsmanship. Silver chain, delicate filigree, a pendant of deep blue stone that matched her eyes exactly. "Konstantin, it's beautiful. It's an old piece. Vampire-made, about 2 centuries old. I've been saving it for someone who mattered." He lifted it from the box. "May I?" She turned, lifting her hair. He fastened it around her neck, his cool fingers brushing her skin. The pendant settled perfectly at her collarbone. "It suits you," he said softly. "But everything suits you." She turned back to face him. "Thank you. I'll treasure it. There's more I want to give you." He took her hands. "Delilah, we've been together almost a year now. You've transformed my existence in ways I didn't think possible. You've made me believe in happiness, in partnership, in building something beyond duty. I love you more than I have words for." Her heart raced. "I love you too. I want to make this permanent as we can, given the circumstances." He took a breath. "I want to marry you, if you'll have me." Tears sprang to her eyes. "Are you proposing?" "Yes, clumsily perhaps, but yes." He smiled, vulnerable and hopeful. "I know marriage between human and vampire is complicated. I know there are political implications and social ramifications, but I don't care. I want you as my wife, Delilah, my partner in every sense. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said, laughing through tears. "Yes, of course, yes." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Delilah felt the last piece of uncertainty dissolve. This was her future. Strange and improbable and absolutely certain, the announcement that night sent shockwaves through the hall. Marriage between the vampire king and a human woman was unprecedented. Not illegal, the truce had provisions for such unions, but rare enough to be remarkable. The reactions were mixed. Some celebrated, seeing it as the ultimate symbol of integration. Others worried about implications for succession and governance. The human parliament sent immediate congratulations. The vampire council requested a formal meeting. Through it all, Konstantin remained steady. "They'll adjust. This is happening." The council meeting was tense. The eldest vampires, some even older than Konstantin, raised concerns about precedent and tradition. "A human queen consort has implications," one argued. "She'll age, she'll die. What happens to the governance structure when she's gone?" "The same thing that happens when any consort dies," Konstantin replied coolly. "We mourn, and we continue. Delilah's mortality doesn't negate her capability or her right to the position. But turning her would solve is not an option unless she chooses it freely, which she has not." His tone brooked no argument. "Delilah will remain human. I will remain as I am. We will build a life together for as long as we're both here. That's final." Victor, bless him, supported Konstantin completely. "The king has made his choice, a good choice from what I've observed. We should be celebrating, not creating obstacles." Eventually, reluctantly, the council conceded. The marriage would proceed. Planning a royal wedding between species was complex. Delilah wanted something relatively small and intimate, but Konstantin's position required a certain level of ceremony. They compromised on a medium-sized event, held at the Covenant estate with representatives from both human and vampire society. Delilah's mother went into planning overdrive, thrilled beyond measure that her daughter was marrying royalty. Her father remained quietly supportive, more concerned with Delilah's happiness than the prestige. "Are you sure?" he asked her one evening. They were in his study, away from the wedding chaos. "This is a huge decision, a permanent one." "I'm sure, Papa. I love him, truly, deeply love him." "Even knowing you'll outlive him? Or he'll outlive you?" "We've talked about it extensively. We know what we're choosing." She took his hand. "I'd rather have 30 or 40 years of genuine happiness with Konstantin than a lifetime of safety with someone I don't love." He nodded slowly. "Then I'm happy for you. Just promise me you'll keep being yourself. Don't let the crown change who you are." "I promise." The wedding took place on the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. Delilah wore white silk, simple and elegant, with Konstantin's necklace at her throat. Her hair was pinned with winter flowers, and she carried a bouquet of dark roses and evergreen. Konstantin waited at the altar in black and silver, his white hair gleaming in candlelight. When Delilah walked down the aisle on her father's arm, his expression transformed with joy and love so open it took her breath away. The ceremony blended human and vampire traditions, vows spoken in both languages, exchanges of rings and blood oaths. Delilah pricked her finger and shared a drop with Konstantin, a symbolic binding that didn't transform her but linked them spiritually. It was old magic, rare and powerful. When they were pronounced married, Konstantin kissed her with such tenderness that half the audience wept. Delilah kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into the contact. This was real. This was forever, for however long forever lasted. The reception was beautiful. Dancing and music, speeches from friends and family, toasts to the happy couple. Margot cried through her entire maid of honor speech. Victor gave a surprisingly touching address about hope and new beginnings. Even some of the skeptical council members seemed genuinely moved. Late in the evening, Konstantin pulled Delilah onto their balcony, where this had all begun. "Happy?" he asked. "Deliriously." She leaned into him. "You?" "More than I ever thought possible." He wrapped his arms around her. "Thank you for taking a chance on me, for seeing past the king to the man underneath. Thank you for seeing me at all, for watching the shy girl by the column when you could have had anyone. I never wanted anyone else. Just you. He kissed her forehead. Always just you. They stood together under the stars, married and happy, and absolutely certain they'd made the right choice. The years that followed were full and beautiful. Delilah finished her degree and began teaching formally at the university. She developed a reputation as an excellent instructor, patient and clear, able to make complex mathematics accessible to struggling students. She loved the work, the sense of purpose and accomplishment. Konstantin supported her completely, never asking her to diminish her ambitions for his schedule. He attended her lectures when he could, sitting in the back and watching with obvious pride. He celebrated when she published her first academic paper, making sure everyone at court knew about his wife's intellectual achievements. They traveled together when his duties allowed to vampire territories across the continent, to human cities where the truce had taken different forms. They learned about each other's worlds, the vast differences and surprising similarities. Delilah became more involved in governance, attending council meetings and offering perspectives that the vampires often missed. Her human insight proved valuable in negotiations and policy decisions. She was careful never to overstep, but Konstantin actively sought her input. "You see things I don't," he told her. "Your mortality gives you a different perspective on time and urgency. We need that." They weathered challenges together. A minor rebellion in the southern territories that required Konstantin's attention for weeks. A human political faction that tried to undermine the truce through propaganda. Personal attacks from extremists on both sides who hated what they represented. Through it all, they remained united. Partners in the truest sense. 5 years into their marriage, Delilah noticed changes in herself. Small things, at first a gray hair here, fine lines around her eyes, the inevitable marks of aging. She mentioned it to Konstantin one evening. They were in bed, her head on his chest while he read. "I'm getting older." "I know." His hand stroked her hair gently. "You're beautiful." "I'll be less beautiful in another 20 years. "Impossible. You'll be yourself in another 20 years. That's all I need." "Konstantin, Delilah." He set his book aside and turned to face her. "I knew what I was choosing when I married you. I knew you'd age. I knew I'd watch you change while I stayed the same. I chose it anyway because loving you is worth every moment of eventual grief. It doesn't bother you? Seeing me get older? It makes every day more precious. Every silver hair, every line, every sign of time passing reminds me to cherish now, to not take you for granted." He cupped her face. "You're aging like fine wine, my love, becoming richer and more complex with every year." She kissed him, grateful for his acceptance, but the question lingered. How much time did they have? 20 years? 30? 40, if she was exceptionally lucky? It wasn't enough, but it would have to be. Another 3 years passed. Delilah was 30 now, entering what should have been the prime of her life. She felt good, healthy, happy. Her work at the university was thriving. Her marriage was strong. Life was full. But she noticed Konstantin watching her sometimes with an expression that broke her heart. Sadness mixed with love, awareness of the ticking clock they couldn't stop. "We should talk about the future," she said one evening. They were in their private garden, a space they'd designed together over the years. "About what happens when I'm gone." "I'd rather not." "We need to." She took his hand. "I want you to be happy after I die. I want you to find someone else, eventually, to not be alone." "There won't be anyone else." "Konstantin." "Delilah, I've lived 3 centuries. I've loved before, though not like this. I know what I'm capable of feeling, and I know you're the pinnacle of it. There won't be another love like this." His voice was firm. "When you're gone, I'll mourn you properly. I'll remember you always. And I'll continue my work because the world needs stability. But I won't try to replace you. That would be impossible." Tears slipped down her face. "I don't want you to be lonely. I'll have memories, decades worth of beautiful memories. That will sustain me." He wiped her tears gently. "Stop worrying about me. I'm immortal. I'll endure. You just focus on living fully while you're here." She nodded, but the conversation haunted her. The thought of Konstantin alone, grieving her for centuries, was almost unbearable. Another year passed. Delilah was 31, and her health was excellent. She'd never felt better. But the awareness of mortality had sharpened. Every birthday was a reminder that time was finite. The final ball of that season fell in late spring, a celebration of renewal and growth. Delilah wore green again, the color of her first truly confident appearance years ago. She'd come so far from the shy girl hiding behind columns. Now she moved through the hall with easy grace, conversing with nobles and dignitaries, laughing with friends. Konstantin watched her with undisguised love. When she caught his eye across the room, he smiled, rare and genuine, the smile he reserved only for her. She made her way to the dais and took her seat beside him. "You're staring." "I always stare. You're worth staring at." "Flatterer. Truth-teller." He took her hand, linking their fingers. "Do you remember the first time I watched you at one of these balls?" "How could I forget? I thought I was hallucinating." "You were so determined to be invisible, to hide yourself away." His thumb rubbed across her knuckles. "Look at you now, confident, accomplished, beloved by half the court and respected by the other half. You've become extraordinary." "I just became myself. You gave me the space and support to do that. We gave each other that space." He raised her hand to his lips. "Best decision I ever made, approaching you on that balcony. Best decision I ever made, saying yes to a second conversation." They smiled at each other, a private moment of connection in the middle of the crowded hall. Victor approached, his ancient face creased with something like approval. "You two are disgustingly happy." "We are," Konstantin agreed cheerfully. "It's good to see. The court needed this, needed proof that the truce isn't just politics, but genuine integration." Victor looked at Delilah. "You've done well, my dear. Better than any of us imagined." "Thank you, Victor. That means a great deal." "I'll leave you to your staring." He wandered off, still shaking his head in amusement. The evening progressed beautifully. Delilah danced with Konstantin, and then with her father, who'd made the journey despite his advancing age. She talked with Margot, who was engaged now to a kind human lord. She accepted congratulations from people who'd once doubted her. As the night wound down, Konstantin drew her out to their balcony one more time. The city sparkled below, peaceful and prosperous under the truce. "I want to show you something," he said. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, not a wedding ring, but something different, a silver band with intricate engravings. "What is this?" "A promise, a reminder." He slipped it onto her right hand where it settled perfectly. "I had it made with symbols representing every year we've been together, every major moment, our first conversation, our marriage, your graduation, all of it captured in silver." She examined the engravings, tears blurring her vision. Each symbol was tiny but perfect, a visual history of their relationship. "It's beautiful." "When you're gone," he said quietly, "I'll have this remade into something I can keep with me always, a reminder of the best years of my very long life." "Konstantin, let me finish. I know you worry about me being alone after, about the centuries stretching ahead without you. But Delilah, you've given me something invaluable. You've shown me that immortality isn't about duration, it's about depth, the quality of time, not the quantity." He turned her to face him. 30 or 40 or 50 years with you will matter more than the 300 I lived before. That's your gift to me. The knowledge that a finite life, fully lived and fully loved, has more meaning than eternity." She was crying openly now. "I love you so much. I love you too. More than I have words for, more than I'll ever be able to express." He kissed her, salt, sweet, and tender. "Thank you for choosing me, for seeing past everything I am to who I am, for building this beautiful life with me." They held each other as stars wheeled overhead, as the city hummed below, as the future stretched uncertain but full of hope. 23 years later, Delilah lay in their bed, her hair silver white, her face lined with decades of laughter and love. She was 54, and her body had finally begun to fail. Not suddenly, she'd had a good life, a healthy life, but age caught everyone eventually. Konstantin sat beside her, holding her hand, his face drawn with grief but composed. They'd talked about this day for years, prepared as best they could. It didn't make it easier. "I'm not afraid," Delilah said. Her voice was weaker now, but still clear. "I've had a beautiful life, more than I ever dreamed possible. You gave me a beautiful life too, Konstantin said. His hand trembled slightly where it held hers. Every day with you is a gift. Promise me you'll be all right, eventually. I promise I'll endure. I'll continue the work we started together. I'll honor your memory by living well. He leaned down to kiss her forehead. But I'll never stop missing you. I know, she smiled up at him. Look for me in the spring flowers, in the mathematics students who finally understand, in the quiet moments between meetings. I'll be there. Always, he whispered. Their children sat nearby, 2 daughters, now grown with families of their own. Konstantin had been shocked when Delilah had gotten pregnant at 33, an unexpected blessing they'd cherished completely. Katrina was 20 now, fierce and brilliant. Elena was 17, gentle and thoughtful. Both had inherited Delilah's intelligence and Konstantin's determination. They'd chosen to remain human, both of them, valuing their mother's perspective on mortality. Konstantin had accepted their decision with grace, though Delilah knew it pained him to know he'd eventually lose them too. Take care of your father, Delilah told them now. He's stronger than he looks, but he'll need you. We will, Mama, Katrina said, tears streaming down her face. Elena just held her mother's other hand, unable to speak. Delilah felt herself slipping, the room growing fuzzy at the edges. She looked at Konstantin one last time, memorizing the face she'd loved for 23 years. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Thank you, he replied, for choosing me, for loving me, for making my existence meaningful. She smiled, and then the light faded. Konstantin sat with her body for hours, holding her hand, memorizing the weight and warmth before it left completely. His daughters stayed with him, grieving together as a family. When he finally rose, he was composed but fundamentally changed. A light had gone out in him that would never fully return. He arranged her funeral with meticulous care. Human and vampire traditions blended, honoring both sides of who she'd been. Hundreds attended students she'd taught, nobles she'd befriended, common citizens who'd been touched by her kindness. The outpouring of love would have embarrassed her and made her happy in equal measure. Konstantin delivered the eulogy himself, his voice steady but eyes bright with unshed tears. He spoke of her intelligence and compassion, her quiet strength, the way she'd transformed not just his life but the entire court. He spoke of love and loss, of treasuring finite time, of the privilege of loving someone so completely. When it was over, when she was laid to rest in the garden she'd loved, Konstantin returned to his duties. He governed with the same careful attention as before. He continued the work they had started together, pushing for further integration and understanding between species. But everyone noticed the change. The light in him had dimmed. He smiled less, laughed almost never. He was still competent, still effective, but something essential had been lost. His daughters visited often, bringing their own children eventually. Konstantin was a devoted grandfather, finding joy in the next generation. But everyone could see he was waiting, enduring as he'd promised, but waiting. Years passed, 5, then 10, then 15. Konstantin kept the ring Delilah had worn, the one with their history engraved on it. He had it reforged into a pendant he wore always, close to his heart. He never took another partner, never even considered it. He'd meant what he'd said, there would be no one after Delilah. She'd been the love of his long life, and he'd spend the rest of his existence honoring her memory. On their anniversary each year, he visited her grave. He'd sit in the garden they'd designed together and talk to her, updating her on their daughters, on the state of the realm, on all the small things she'd have found interesting. He'd bring flowers, spring blooms, always her favorites. 20 years after her death, he sat by her grave on a warm spring afternoon. The garden was in full bloom, exactly as she'd loved it. Their daughters were there too, gray-haired now themselves, with children and grandchildren in tow. You'd love seeing them all together, Konstantin said quietly. The family we built. It's beautiful, Delilah. Everything we hoped for. Katrina sat beside him. You loved her so much. More than anything. More than immortality or power or anything else I've accumulated in 4 centuries. He touched the pendant at his throat. She was the best of my very long life. She loved you too, completely. Katrina took his hand. She wouldn't want you to grieve forever. I'm not grieving. Not anymore. He looked at the grave, at the simple stone marked with her name and dates. "I'm remembering. There's a difference. Grief is pain. Memory is treasure. I've moved from one to the other." "Good," Elena said from his other side. That's what she'd want. They sat together in the garden, 3 generations of family surrounding the grave of the woman who'd started it all. The shy girl who'd hidden behind columns and captured a king's attention. The teacher who'd made mathematics beautiful. The wife and mother and friend who'd touched so many lives. Konstantin felt peace settle over him. Delilah was gone, but her impact remained. In their daughters and grandchildren, in the students she'd taught who'd gone on to teach others, in the policies she'd influenced and the attitudes she'd changed, in the vampire king who'd learned to treasure finite time as the greatest gift. He would endure, as he'd promised. He would continue their work. And someday, centuries from now, when his own time finally ended, he'd hope to find her again in whatever came next. But for now, he had memories. Decades worth of beautiful, precious memories. Of balcony conversations and shared books. Of wedding vows and children's laughter. Of a quiet woman who'd seen him truly and loved him anyway. It was enough. It had to be. And somehow, sitting in the garden with spring flowers blooming and family surrounding him, it was. Konstantin closed his eyes and felt the sun on his face, still uncomfortable for his vampire nature, but bearable. Delilah had loved sunshine, had loved sitting in this very spot on days like this. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything, for choosing me when you could have chosen safety, for loving me despite the impossible odds, for giving me the best years of my very long life." The breeze rustled through the flowers, carrying the scent of roses and hope. And for just a moment, Konstantin could have sworn he felt her hand in his, warm and real and absolutely certain. Together, even across the veil of death, partners, even when separated by the barrier between mortal and immortal. Love, transcending time and distance and every reasonable limitation. It was impossible, of course. But then, so had been everything about them from the very start. And that had turned out beautifully.